for wasting all of our time.
Legislative actors, secretaries of state, county clerks, even in some cases, state judges. And they have no authority to do that under the federal constitution, which assigns the exclusive power to the state legislature to direct the manner of choosing presidential electors. So Pennsylvania law expanded its mail-in voting. That expansion was subsequently held to be illegal under the Pennsylvania Constitution, but they expanded it even before the COVID pandemic hit. But they retained signature verification so that the expanded mail-in voting would still be subject to a check to prevent fraud. The Secretary of State, in response to what I call a collusive suit by the League of Women Voters, just eliminated on her own the signature verification process altogether. I think that was an
collusive suit, like collusion, like she told. Like the governor or whatever told them to file the suit? Does he have evidence for that? Or
alteration of the state law that the state legislature had put in place, and therefore an unconstitutional action in the conduct of the election.
Now, were there others? Let's keep it Pennsylvania.
Yeah, there were others in Pennsylvania. They altered the deadline for return of absentee ballots. They allowed ballots that were maybe even mailed after Election Day if the postmark was illegible or non-existent, as long as it was received by the Friday after Election Day. Those
Pisco saying he lied about the Pennsylvania thing. If you want, you can shoot me a court case or whatever, and we can read it real quick.
Post-election ballots that he counted. They altered, in my view.
Oh, wait, hold on. The U.S. Supreme Court reverses the Pennsylvania mail voting law decision. Oof. You are wrong. Look up collusive suit. A lawsuit where the parties are not actually in disagreement but are cooperating to steer the court towards some agreed upon conclusion. Okay. Turn off link ban. How do you not know how to get around the link ban? Just link it in chat and don't tag me. Christ. This is in the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, Middle District. Supreme Court of Pennsylvania means that this is the highest court in Pennsylvania? Or for when it says Middle District, are there multiple highest court in Pennsylvania? Why does it say Middle District? The fuck does that mean? Middle? I'm so confused. In the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, Middle District. I don't understand what the Middle District means here. The United States District Court, no. It's the green, okay. Yeah, Court, Middle District. The United States, okay, wait. If it says District Court, this is a federal court, right? It's not the same thing, right? I don't understand what the fuck. Oh, Middle District of Pennsylvania. The Middle District of Pennsylvania extends over blah, 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 from the blah, blah, blah. District. Okay, I'm guessing it got appealed from the Middle District, and and then the Supreme Court is the highest. So these are all state courts. Everything. I'm guessing what this is what this means. I have no fucking idea. That's my guess. Okay. Wait, this is the dumb fuck nomenclature that Pennsylvania uses. It's not the Supreme Court, just an appellate level. Oh, so this is not their highest court. Wait, really? No. Bro, every state has like different nomenclature for their courts. It's actually actual fucking AIDS cancer. Okay. Okay. Pisco, you weren't typing anything. Is this the same case that the Supreme Court ruled on? Because if so, wouldn't I just want the Supreme Court's ruling on this? No, wait, hold on. What I just said doesn't even make any sense. Or no, wait, it does make sense. Wait, what is the course? Can the Supreme Court review a decision from a state Supreme Court? Or does it have to go through federal courts? Sometimes. Okay, Pennsylvania's top-ranking election officials said the decision was under review and the guidance to counties about how to handle such ballots. Okay, U.S. Supreme Court reverses. Okay, the U.S. Supreme Court invalidated a lower appeals court decision. This was a federal court. Is this even the same case, or is this a different case that it's referring to? Holy fucking AIDS. This is the Act 77 case. Okay, commonly referred to as Act 77. Okay, the Supreme Court case is for a different case then, I'm guessing. Okay. Do they do a syllabus for, Steve, the history of the Commonwealth and development of its constitution more than 100 years ago? No one cares. Pennsylvania, who cares? Okay. So they reversed that decision. And why does he say that it was unconstitutional? Hold on.
And therefore an unconstitutional pandemic hit. But they retained signature verification so that the expanded mail-in voting would still be subject to a check to prevent fraud. The Secretary of State, in response to what I call a collusive suit by the League of Women Voters, just eliminated on her own the signature verification process altogether.
In a collusive suit all on her own, they eliminated that altogether. But ultimately, they couldn't have eliminated it on their own if it was a suit. There must have been a judge that signed off on this, right? Go back a minute. Okay.
A very aggressive position to take. But you thought it was defensible or plausible, and in the circumstances worth pursuing. Circumstances we shall discuss. So, the central wrong, as you see it, is that the election was stolen. You thought Trump had actually won the election, right?
Normal things of fraud, but more importantly, and the things I focused on were the alterations of state election law by non-legislative actors, secretaries of state, county clerks, even in some cases, state judges. And they have no
Hold on, I was
authority.
reading
Stolen.
chat. I'm sorry.
You thought Trump had actually won the election, right?
Normal things of fraud, but more importantly, and the things I focused on were the alterations of state election law by non-legislative actors, secretaries of state, county clerks, even in some cases, state judges. And they have no authority to do that under the federal constitution, which assigns the exclusive power to the state legislature to direct the manner of choosing presidential electors.
Wait, what? Hold on. I'm so sorry. 1 second.
You thought Trump had actually won the election, right?
Normal things of fraud, but more importantly, and the things I focused on were the alterations of state election law
Alterations of state election law
by non-legislative actors, secretaries
by non-legislative actors.
of state, county clerks, even in some cases, state judges. And they have no authority to do that under the federal constitution, which assigns the exclusive power to the state legislature to direct the manner of choosing presidential electors.
What is this argument? He's saying that. Why are we watching this? I hate these people. Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. I thought he was making a coherent legal argument. He's making the argument that the Constitution says that only the state legislature can make rules relating to, in this case, mail-in ballots, and that it doesn't matter what the fuck the state courts say, or it doesn't matter what the fuck anybody else says, that for the state to do something else, it's violating the U.S. Constitution. Independent state legislature theory. Oh, I've heard of this, but I didn't read any of this in detail. This is about the Moore case. This is 65 pages long. Why do these people agree to do these interviews? Well, I mean, they have their novel legal theories, but I mean, I don't think anybody pays that much of attention to it, right? Like, this guy has 17,000 views on this. It's just legal stuff. Nobody cares. But the Secretary of State is part of the legislature. Are they? Generally, secretaries and all of that are aren't they officers that are part of offices that would be part of the governor's office, part of the execution branch, right? Executive branch.
So Pennsylvania law expanded its mail-in voting. That expansion was subsequently held to be illegal under the Pennsylvania Constitution, but they expanded it even before the COVID pandemic hit. But they retained.
So what? So he just thinks that the Constitution, he just thinks that all of this was illegal and that Pennsylvania is wrong, and that the did the U.S. Supreme Court review this decision? U.S. Supreme Court Act 77, Pennsylvania. Did it even get appealed up to the Supreme Court? This is a different case. This is not the same, right? Oh, fuck, dude. I hate jumping into these without just reading. Pennsylvania has their own Supreme Court, no? Every state has their highest court, but state Supreme Courts, the highest courts in a state only has the authority to hear state matters, right? They can't, if the federal government can intervene somehow, then the U.S. Supreme Court would be the one to hear that. Or if a state Supreme Court makes a ruling that's violative of the United States Constitution, then the U.S. Supreme Court could hear that and overturn it. Join my room, Pisco.
Holy garbanzo.
Hi, what's up, buddy?
How you there?
Yep, I can hear you.
I just want to learn you a little bit. So what he's talking about are kind of separate theories of unconstitutionality. One are a broader concern that state legislatures themselves did not pass changes to election systems and sort of offshooted it to state executive officials or judicial decisions, and that was constitutional. That's the Moore v. Harper decision. That's the independent state legislature theory. The response to that is well, hang on. If a state legislature gives the right for a state executive official to make certain changes, it kind of reminds you of Chevron, right? Where if a state decides by
it's not even Chevron. It's just the legislature, at least in the federal government, the legislature can empower right. Yeah, that's just a thing. I don't know if states
it
can do that.
Reminds you of that. Yeah. So
yeah.
There were some arguments that no. When they say state legislature, they mean not even, you can't even have a constitutional amendment change how the voting system happens for president in in states.
Where in the Constitution are we finding support for this argument?
Article 2, it's called the Presidential Electors Clause. It's different than the Elections Clause for Congress. The Presidential Electors Clause says that
and it's this one, Clause 2. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors.
Yeah, so their argument is when it says legislature, it's specific. It's not calling out the state general apparatus. They're saying only the legislature and only legislature. And so what they're saying essentially is the states can pass elections laws that violate their own state constitutions, and they cannot delegate that to any state executive official. So this would be a rule that would be like not even state constitutions can limit how the state legislature and only the state legislature acts, not any other organization. Like you couldn't go to court and try to claim that something in the state constitution prevents a particular assignment of electors. So that's the independent state legislature theory. That was kind of a broad.
Wait, so what is the
Yeah.
wait? So just run conceptually then. So what is the
Yeah.
independent state legislature theory? What is the idea that?
So the independence of that term is saying only one body is called out in the Constitution that is allowed to assign electors. And that one body is not the states as such, the states generally. It's the state legislatures. So only the legislative bodies of the states, however they are the exclusive means by which electors are assigned for
Sure.
president.
And then are we ignoring that manner could easily apply to like the manner that the legislature directs, calls out like some kind of like state secretary or executive thing? Do we just ignore that or?
Yeah, what they're saying is that they're not allowed to under their own. You can't give that away. So you couldn't give it away to an executive agent, and that's the theory. It's not been accepted by the Supreme Court. It lost 6-3. I think that's ridiculous that it wasn't a 9-0 decision, but that's where our court is at.
Wait,
But-
hold on,
but
wait.
that's- yeah.
You said it lost 6-3. Hold on. The three that voted against it, one, definitely Thomas. Yeah, right. Do you know the three?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, Thomas is one for sure. Hold on, okay. Second, I just hate him because of all the majority opinions I read. You say he's the center of the court. Fuck you. Roberts, was he one of the ones that voted against it?
No, Roberts is the majority opinion.
Then what? Then what was it? Kavanaugh and Gorsuch or who?
It's Gorsuch and Alito.
Oh, Alito. I always forget that fucker. Gorsuch
Yeah.
and Alito.
Yeah.
What was,
So he,
what was Gorsuch's argument?
Or
Or
there
did
was
he
only
write-
one dissent. I think it was just Thomas's dissent. Yeah.
Wait,
And,
how do you
yeah.
feel about the? I haven't. I just don't have the time. Fuck. Do you think that Thomas should be impeached?
For what?
I think AOC filed for impeachment because of the accepting of gifts or whatever, the yacht stuff and the trips and everything. Or
Yeah,
apparently-
that crime and misdemeanor. It would depend. I don't have the evidence right now to.
okay,
I don't
okay,
think that
okay.
I don't have the evidence right now to say that. Yeah.
What was the name of this case? Moore v. Harper.
Moore v. Harper. So that is a case dealing with everyone's kind of accusations in the middle of the election. That this is all unconstitutional because you had state agencies and state like secretaries of state saying like, opening up new polling locations for COVID, right? Or implementing new rules for COVID or like declaring new things, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were saying, well, they can't do that because that wasn't the legislature. And so these new regulations weren't allowed. That was like one flavor of the argument. That's been rejected in Moore v. Harper.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were there any other better arguments, or was that like
The
the
other
main one?
arguments were, okay, maybe independent state legislature theory isn't true, but under their own laws, they violated their own laws. And that's the kind of like the Act 77 case. That's
Wait,
a
I'm
separate
curious.
brand.
Let's say that a state legislature passes a law. The state legislature says the law says that, on the first day of the month, the governor's going to come out and he's going to say the word 7, and the governor comes out and he says the word 8. Okay, so he's clearly legally violating whatever the legislature passed. Let's say that somebody challenges this and it goes all the way to the highest court in the state, and the highest court in the state says, "Oh no, we think he's following the rule." Assuming that this is all a state matter, and it's a state ruling, or it's the state's judiciary, doing the legal analysis of a state decision, does the U.S. Supreme Court have any review there, or no?
Almost certainly not. I say almost certainly just because there could be some crazy application of federal law if you're like, I don't know. This has never been the case, Stephen, so I'm just telling you
Sure.
things that have been talked about in oral arguments. If it's such a drastic departure from everything, maybe you're violating the constitutional command to have a Republican form of government or something crazy like that, right?
Uh-huh.
And there were even hypotheticals like this where, like, if a judicial interpretation of a constitutional provision applied to a manner in which the legislature designated their electors, if that judicial decision was so gross, so plainly constitutive of like a corrupt and kind of policy act on behalf of a judge, maybe then the federal courts would have jurisdiction to hear that interpretation. That was accepted, I think, even by the people saying that the independent state legislature theory was incorrect. Is like maybe there are some cases in which federal jurisdiction could be held over some state Supreme Court constitutional interpretation of a state law, but almost always, and you should just assume always, the state highest court's interpretation of a state law for purposes of
not
of
like a
state
federal or
law,
not like an interstate thing. Yeah, yeah.
is a final, absolutely final decision that cannot be reviewed.
Sure.
And so the Act 77 case is about, it's actually counter to the independent state legislature theory, right? The independent state legislature theory says, hey, the legislature can pass whatever it wants. It doesn't even have to listen to its own constitution. And Act 77 was, without any.
Wait, is the independent state legislature theory, does it apply to more than just Article 2, Clause 2? Are there other parts of the Constitution that call out like the legislature
No, it's just for that.
This is
that
fucking
clause.
retarded, right? Or do people take this seriously? Or am I missing something?
People, people, we had to take it seriously because we were all scared that the court might like adopt it.
Huh.
But there's other case law in the books about, like, say for instance, there have been referendum, right? Like constitutional referendum in where people can vote on like an amendment to the Constitution. You're aware of that? Where people have voted on, for example, Nebraska. I don't know if that was through
like to amend a
referendum.
state constitution or the U.S.
Be
constitution?
like, all right, we're going to do ranked choice voting in Nebraska now, or
Okay.
we're going to do ranked choice voting in Maine.
Sure.
And they passed it via a general vote for that's how we're going to do it from now on. That would call into question those things because that is in the state legislature, right? That's a vote by the people of the state to change the manner in which the presidential electors are assigned. And so people were very scared that it was going to call into question that, any kind of constitutional change. And because all of these state legislatures are heavily gerrymandered, even more so than the federal counterparts. Think about Wisconsin. Those of you who were following it all, like the Wisconsin split for vote for their state legislatures has always been like very competitive, right? Wisconsin is one of the most competitive states, but like they've had advantages in the legislature of like 60 or to 40%, even though the vote split between Democrat and Republicans like pretty much 50-50 for like the past decade. And so people sort of saw it as a convenient way for pro-Republicans to, have these almost impossible to contest gerrymanders in state legislatures, and you couldn't even change any of their decisions based on like even a constitutional referenda in its own state.
Is there a singular like reference to this concept of the state legislature being like God in like any writing or anything at all? Or
not really. There's it's kind of a textual analysis, which is like, well, if they say legislature, right? They don't say executive. And so we should read into like, in other places in the Constitution, it says states. And so why should we read into that? Like we should read into some decision to give it to the state legislature.
How do you, and can you, do they deal with so as like a strictly textual interpretation, right? If I were to read this as each state shall appoint as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to, like I would agree. But when you have that in such manner, why can't that in such manner on a purely textual basis, without there being another clause saying the legislature may not, delegate this power or assign this power to some other branch, why wouldn't that in such manner just on a textual basis cover that?
That was one of the arguments that it could be such a manner to do it. That the other argument was, well, state legislatures are just a matter of state constitution, right? So how can you say that the state constitution is the body that kind of designs what the state legislature looks like? You could have
you could literally have it where they're like, oh, we actually do believe in the independent state legislature theory, and then a state constitution could just define literally the entire government as like legislature, capital L, and you'd kind of be like,
right. So
sure.
that was kind of Justice Jackson's argument. We're like, yeah, well, look at all the rules that are set by the state constitution. You have to follow them anyway for like what like passes to become a law, and so all of the things that any state legislature does is always going to be subject to the state constitution. So how can it be that like regulations or referendums or limitations made in state constitutions that the founders didn't expect those to obviously apply? You should read more of versus Harper if you're interested. But what I want to call out is like the hypocrisy here. On the one hand, they're arguing that, hey, the state's legislature can do whatever they want. And so who are you to question if a state legislature wants to assign everything for Trump, or if if you want to invalidate, or if, a state executive officer wants to make a rule that's going to be invalidated. That's on the one hand their argument, right? And on the other hand, they're saying, no. the state legislature of Pennsylvania can't extend mail-in voting to everybody because that violates the Pennsylvania state constitution. So it's the direct opposite arguments.
And they were also searching for, I think it was related to Pennsylvania. Texas wanted to make a statement about.
Right.
Yeah, they also said Texas, like, well, hold on, we actually feel like we're an injured party to how you run your elections too. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of contradictions there. But the Act 77 case that I gave to you was like the Pennsylvania Supreme Court counter to what this fraud and phony and loser and should be in jail guy John Eastman is saying, absolutely found that it was constitutional under the Pennsylvania state constitution for Pennsylvania to expand voting. And so he's just wrong about what Pennsylvania, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania had to say on that matter. And that legislation was passed as a bipartisan measure prior to the COVID pandemic happening. And so it wasn't in response to COVID. It was passed with Republicans, signed by a Democratic governor. And so even his story of it is incoherent because on the one hand, he's saying only the legislature can act, but this legislature did something I didn't like back before COVID. And so it's automatically bad faith because he cannot be consistent even in his own like frame of the constitutionality of assigning your electors. And so this guy's a loser. And Trump was using his quote unquote advice, which wasn't really legal advice. It was just any kind of way to steal the election. Any other questions?
No, I'll read a couple pages of fucking wacky Thomas. I'll see what he says.
All right, later, man.
Love you, buddy. Fuck, okay, I don't care that much for this. Okay. Tiny needs to watch this. Here you go.
Parada. Mix-up time. Doesn't get a clean hit. On that, the shoulder. Well, he can kill. He has rage. The shoulder again. Oh, the razor. Oh, my God.
Oh my god. Dude! What are these rage
Not as the
arts?
game director of Tekken. Okay.
Is this what you taught her?
No! Wow, that was a surprisingly good match.
That was actually like Parada. Mix-up time. Doesn't get a clean hit. On that, the shoulder.
Okay, cool. Nice. Any more time we can waste today? Oh, we didn't even... I'll watch like up to 10 minutes of this. I guess we'll see.
Signature verification so that the expanded mail-in voting would still be subject to a check to prevent fraud. The Secretary of State, in response to what I call a collusive suit by the League of Women Voters, just eliminated on her own the signature verification process altogether. I think that was an alteration of the state law that the state legislature had put in place, and therefore an unconstitutional action in the conduct of the election.
Now, were there others? Let's keep
Wait, so why... Okay, so this is what Pisco's talking about. Wait, why is he saying that then the state legislature can't do this? That it's an unconstitutional law? What's his argument that the state legislature...
Suit by the League of Women Voters just eliminated on her own the signature verification process altogether. I think that was an alteration of the state law that the state legislature had put in place, and therefore an...
One last...
Yeah. Wait, what's his argument that the state legislature couldn't change this law or eliminate this thing?
Act 77?
Yeah, or he says it's unconstitutional.
Because there's a provision of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, Pennsylvania Constitution that says like these cases they'll be mail-in voting, and so people were like saying, "Hey, this was these are the only places that the Constitution says you can have mail-in voting." But the response was, "No, this isn't like a ceiling; it's a floor. It's saying at a bare minimum you have to have mail-in voting for this amount of people." Okay. And so that was the kind of argument. But one last thing, for everyone who's arguing that Biden stepping down would be quote anti-democratic, I think you have brainworms. All of this. And I don't know if Stephen, I'm not sure if you agree. You can
hold on. Just as a quick pause. Is this a real argument? Listen, I'm so brain fucked right now. Is this a real argument or are these bots? Are there like any media figures or anybody that said that like if we don't support Biden, it's like anti-democratic? Because I've seen some big Twitter accounts tweeting it, but that seems like the dumbest fucking argument of the world.
There are some real people thinking it and tweeting it because people voted, obviously. They did vote for president.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But my response to that is, listen, it's Biden's nomination right now. He has earned those delegates, and he has a right, if he wants to step down or to stay on. And no one can like literally force him.
Yeah, or actually, I think you could be even more precise. It's not his nomination right now. He just has the delegates.
Oh, sorry,
right? Yeah, the nomination's not even technically chosen yet. So yeah.
Right. I made a big tweet about this, but all of these nominations are private contests. Prior to like the 60s, there were not even like binding primary votes at all. They were all kind of just display votes to the extent that they were having even primary contests. Even in this country now, like some states don't have primaries, they have caucuses. Some states have open primaries, some don't. Some have like there are primaries in places that don't have any representation for presidential elections, like American Samoa. Anyone who remembers what the hell was this guy's name? Jason Palmer beat Joe Biden. It was the only contest he lost during this cycle. So like this is a pure act of policy by the DNC and by the Democrats. I agree with the policy generally, but you know, there's the real election is in November. That's when the election is. This is a private organization. They've made rules. They should abide by those rules, and those rules contain within them like conditions and provisos, which is like if a candidate steps down, these are the steps that happen afterwards. And so all of these primaries were run with those rules completely intact and with everyone having notice of those rules. And part of those rules include the processes by which a presumptive nominee could step down.
Yeah.
There's
I will
nothing-
say though, I
Yeah.
could understand remember when we talk about sizable chunks of the voter base, we really only need like 3 or 4% to make somebody basically unelectable, right? I could understand like that percentage of people being like, wait a second, I didn't vote for fucking Kamala Harris. I wanted Biden. So even if technically it's within the rules to him to release his delegates to her or whatever, I could see people feeling burned by that. Even if I would say
I understand the
the
feeling burned by it, but and you can definitely feel burned by it. But it's just a question of like, is it quote anti-democratic? And if by anti-democratic you mean like not going by the results of the primary contest, then I guess by definition it's quote anti-democratic. But that is ignoring the other components of the rules, which were expressly incorporated in all these contests, and it's part of the process. And the notion that it would require Biden's consent. Biden.
Well, hold on, wait. Just as a real quick thing, when we talk about rules, none of that actually matters. Like we all agree, every single person can agree that he can release his delegates to whoever he wants, and you can do that. But the question is, will you vote for him in the general? That's the important part, right? And regardless of whether it's in the rules or not, right? Like we could all agree that it was technically within the rules that if Hillary Clinton wanted to, after Sanders stepped down, she could have gone to the convention and just like given all of her delegates to her fucking daughter or something. I don't know. And then people in the general will be like, okay, well, fine, you can do that, but we're not voting. Fuck you, right? People will feel burned by that.
No, but what I mean is like I think that decision, if Hillary Clinton did that, I don't think that would be acceptable by the rules. If you try to do that.
You can't just release your delegates into the wild and let them
to
run
a
free?
specific person and be like, I am conclusively and preclusively giving them over to Bernie
Well,
Sanders.
they don't. I don't think they don't
specific
have
person.
to release them to a specific person, but like they can.
Yeah, but
they
that's
can
part
say
of the
something,
rules,
right?
So
Yeah.
if Hillary Clinton was like, I can't, I don't think I'm going to be able to beat Trump. Actually, I'm just going to give them all, and we can have a contested convention. What would be anti-democratic about that if the candidate themselves came to that determination? Now, if there was like some illegal activity or someone was like blackmailing Joe Biden, no, but like
Sure.
Joe Biden does not have an entitlement to the support of his entire party. He doesn't.
Yeah.
Imagine that Joe Biden came out and said like something incredibly inflammatory, actually said like, I support Donald Trump's entire agenda, right? Or if he said like a racial slur, although he did say like the black man when referencing Lloyd Austin. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't, but
Yeah, that was a bad moment. I think like everyone would understand that the party wouldn't have to support him regardless of what he did.
Sure.
He lost the confidence of his party, and it's just like any parliamentary system. There, like you have to maintain the confidence of your party, and if you don't, you may not have the advantages. But ultimately, the decision is going to be his, whether he wants to stay or not. And there's nothing anti-democratic about Biden being presented that choice, and by other members of the community, donors, representatives, voters themselves, using their First Amendment rights to say, "Hey, we don't have the confidence right now that you're going to be able to beat Donald Trump." That's totally within the bounds of the game. Anyway, that's my only point.
I will say, can we agree on this point? Okay.
Yeah.
Whether the Democrats need to decide, the DNC needs to decide if they want to stay or if they want to change, and there can't be this behind the scenes chatter is some bullshit. They need to come together and figure out their shit. If you're going to replace them, then get everybody on board with the messaging and get everybody, coherent, cohesive, and, ready to campaign for whoever the new person is, or the open process, whatever you choose, and do it. And if you're not, then get everybody to shut the fuck up and fall in line. This idea of like the leaks and the high level lawmakers and AOC going on fucking TikTok and it's like, Jesus, what the fuck is happening? Yeah. My God.
I think that they have decided, and I think that the person who hasn't decided is Joe Biden. And I think this is.
You really think so?
I think so. Yeah. And y'all can disagree if you want, but my take on everything is that the majority of the party, at least the important people in the party, have made up their minds, and this is escalation warfare. And it's just showing their hand that, listen, this will get worse and more embarrassing for you, Mr. Biden, if you don't, agree with us. I think that once you have, Pelosi, Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, all being sourced and, with leaked parts of those calls saying you should step down and them not denying it, if they're all in favor of him stepping down, who's going to be against it?
Are we 100% that they're all in favor of him stepping down? Like,
if they weren't, why wouldn't they deny it?
I don't know what the policies are for these types of people, but like, let's say that it gets leaked for 5 people. You might have a policy where you just don't confirm or deny anyway, because if 4 people come out and deny it, then you basically have confirmation on the 5th person, because some people are breaking. But I don't know like what their ordinary policies would be, right? Like, for instance, like the United States or like Israel, like when assassinations happen, like the U.S. just doesn't comment. They don't like deny everything except for the things they did, and they say no comment. They just say no comment categorically, right?
But they're being coy about stuff, and I think that the reporting is absolutely true. And there's too many. It's too well sourced. And you have Sherrod Brown just came out today. It's going to keep coming. I think they've made up their mind, and I think that decision is a wise decision. And I think that Joe Biden is very angry and hurt by that decision. And I feel for him, because he has been an exceptional president in my mind, and he feels like he's earned a second presidency. But like, that's not. We have to think about the country first, and it's not anti-democratic to say, Joe, look, you're losing support. You don't have the confidence of us. Make the right decision. If he decides to stay in, I will disagree with that decision, but I will absolutely support him 100%. But that's just what I see it. I don't think it's anti-democratic. It's his choice, and it's fine for people to voice their concerns. That's totally within the rules of the game. In democracy, you're allowed to speak your voice, and you're allowed to argue for certain policies that are within the rules.
Interesting. Huh. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not going to put you on the spot because...
On the spot for what?
Well, I could.
For what? What am I on the spot for?
Gun to your head right now. Kamala Harris, Joe Biden. Who do you prefer to be a candidate right now?
Bro, why?
You don't have to answer that.
Yeah, that's a hard one. Jesus Christ.
Biden's strongest warrior right now.
Are you going to be Kamala's strongest warrior?
No. I mean, like, if
who do you
were
think
Biden's
Kamala would
strongest
choose?
warrior, why don't you say Joe Biden?
Well, because obviously he's had a lot of trouble, right? I didn't like the swing state polls. The things that I just saw this morning didn't look too hot. But man, Kamala Harris, oof. Who do you think she would choose for VP? I'm guessing there's not even like a hint of that, right?
I think Mark Kelly's been talked about.
Okay.
Think about how delicious that would be. Mark Kelly, Arizona, back on the map.
Okay.
Oh.
Huh.
You're liking it, aren't you?
Well, I don't know how I'm feeling about the black female presidential candidate when we've already got the conservatives railing on the DEI and blah, blah, blah. And like, I don't know.
You don't believe all that.
I don't believe all
DGG
that.
has fallen. This entire, I mean, like, come on. If you believe that really with your heart, you would say
Believe
Joe Biden,
what?
of course. That was your answer not 2 weeks ago. You was Joe Biden, of course. I'm not going to vote for that. But now you're rethinking, and it shows.
Okay.
Constitutional action in the conduct of the election.
Now, were there others? Let's keep to Pennsylvania.
Yeah, there were others in Pennsylvania. They altered the deadline for return of absentee ballots. They allowed ballots that were maybe even mailed after Election Day if the postmark was illegible or non-existent, as long as it was received by the Friday after Election Day, those post-election ballots to be counted. They altered, in my view, the ability of people to observe and challenge illegal votes or ballots that came in where the signature on the envelope was so unlike the signature on file that it was a different person. But the state court, at the urging of the Secretary of State, said we're not going to allow even challenges to those things.
Do they really do signature matching or verification on ballot? That seems wild. How many people actually have a consistent signature? I wonder what would get tossed. My signature is literally like a scribble.
These are the kind of things that applied in the other swing states, and are there an example of what?
So in Georgia, the Secretary of State there entered into a consent decree that severely weakened the signature verification process there, almost to the point that it became meaningless. In Wisconsin, the Secretary of State and county clerks essentially got rid of voter ID in the 2 largest Democrat counties in the state for mail-in ballots. They allowed ballot harvesting in nursing homes without the statutorily required bipartisan observation.
Now, have you gone through state by state, noting the irregularities and the fraud, which we haven't come to, and made an estimate of what might be or might have been the effect on the vote?
I have, and in each of the swing states, the number of ballots that are provably illegal or circumstantially illegal exceeds the margin in each of those states. So I'll give you one example. In Pennsylvania, the elimination of signature verification. In prior years, the disqualification rate of ballots that came in and were invalidated because the signature didn't remotely look like the signature on file was about 4%.
This is historically.
Historically. And in some counties, like Philadelphia County, it was as high as 8%. But in this election, it was under 1%. And so if you look at that differential, you say, say, okay, there are more than 150,000 votes.
That 150, we don't know Biden or Trump. So how do you extrapolate?
Wait,
yeah,
what? Hold on.
Might have been the effect on the vote.
I have, and in each of the swing states, the number of ballots that are provably illegal or circumstantially illegal exceeds the margin in each of those states. So I'll give you one example. In Pennsylvania, the elimination of signature verification. In prior years, the disqualification rate of ballots that came in and were invalidated because the signature didn't remotely look like the signature on file was about 4%.
This is historically.
Historically. And in some counties, like Philadelphia County, it was as high as 8%.
What is this? Doesn't pass the smell test. Almost 10% of votes were tossed in the county. That sounds really, really, really high. Is it? Can somebody give me a link to what he's talking about? It was 8%. 8% ballots tossed. Signature verification. Yeah, even 4% sounds high. The rejected ballot data from the November 3rd election demonstrates the integrity of election. Well, no, because they're just going to say they didn't reject them because give me like for 2012, right? This is a very low number, right? 1,000 ballots rejected and not cured out of how many millions of voters? What is the Georgia population? 4 more minutes.
But in this election, it was under 1%. And so if you look at that differential, you say, okay, there are more than 150,000 votes.
That 150, we don't know Biden or Trump. So how do you extrapolate?
You can look at the votes where there was no problem with the signature, and you can look at how those people voted, and that was about 2-1 for Biden over Trump. And then you can take that number and assume something similar for the ballots that should have been disqualified but weren't. And that means you deduct 100,000 from Biden's total and 50,000 from Trump's total. The margin in Pennsylvania was 80,000 total. That one issue alone would have made up about 50,000 of the difference.
So we've accounted for 50,000 of the 80,000 margin that Biden had in Pennsylvania. Now, I assume there are other things that must have brought it over the 80,000.
Sure, there were several. One, the change in the date for return of absentee ballots. There's some dispute about how many. The Secretary of State claims about 10,000. The Trump campaign people claim about 70,000. So if it was the Trump campaign number 70,000, that other issue alone gets you well over the 80,000 threshold.
Can't we ascertain that?
Well, we can if we had access to the records, which in many of these states has been difficult to achieve, particularly after the
And
fact.
there's no court action.
There's no court action pending that would force that.
So if you had to guess at this point, what would have been the election results in Pennsylvania had they been properly run?
My best guess is Trump probably picks up about 200,000 out of all these totals, which means he wins by 120,000 rather than losing by 80,000. But again, a lot of that is circumstantial and hard to prove after the fact, which is one of the difficulties of election challenges.
Right, but if it went back to the states, the state legislatures would have to make the kind of judgments that you're making.
Well, this gets very complicated because the very fact that the election was not conducted in the manner that they had directed meant that it was an illegal election. And as a matter of constitutional...
Jesus Christ. Domestic absentee ballots, the reasons for rejection. Let's see. Okay. Total number of ballots rejected in each state. So the total number of ballots rejected in 2012, the total number of rejected ballots across the entire country was 260,000, and the total number of non-matching signatures was 45,000 across the entire country. Where is he getting this 4% to 8% figure from? If somebody could source me that, I'd be so curious. Now he was a little tricky actually. He said in a particular county. Is he talking about some county that had like 120 voters and for some reason they can't fucking write, so like 20 of them got hello? Based.
Hey, super quick. Ryan Macbeth wants to chat with you about the bot stuff, and I got him. Got like an.
Fuck. I think
layover.
I was trading emails with him. I'll talk to him when he comes back because he's I think he's traveling right now. Yeah.
He just added me, and he said that he's got a layover for the next like 2 hours, so he's willing to make some time for you. And I could put you guys in a group and on Discord.
I'll do it when he comes back. So it's not AIDS microphone and everything else.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay. I love you. Be careful. Bye.
Bye. Wait, did you tell him that, or do you need me to communicate with him? Sorry, before I hang up.
I emailed him earlier actually.
Do you want me to let him know when he gets back, or are you going to let him know? Just so that one of us does.
I've got it. Sorry, I don't know why it took long. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay, be careful. Looking at analysis of rejected ballots. It sounded like he was saying before this election. He said 8% was statewide, or 4% was statewide, and 8% for Philadelphia County. Okay.
law, the power devolves back to them to decide how to choose the electors. Politically, unless they can show that the illegalities affected the outcome, it would be politically imprudent to come up with any certification of electors that was different than the popular vote.
So one of the things that skeptics say is there have been lots of recounts, and they basically show what the original count was: Biden won. Maricopa County is an example. Again, they had a recount, and I think Biden received, or they calculated that Biden had 200 more votes than he did the first time around.
Well, that's true, but the problem is they're recounts of the ballots. They're not assessments of the validity.
Show what the original count was: Biden won. Maricopa County is an example. Again, they had a recount, and I think Biden received, or they calculated that Biden had 200 more votes than he did the first time around.
Well, that's true, but the problem is they're recounts of the ballots. They're not assessments of the validity of the ballots. Garbage in, garbage out. If you have an illegal ballot that's in the original count and then you recount it again, it's not a surprise that they come up with roughly the same number. The question that an audit would do rather than a recount, and that's what we needed and we didn't get, is whether the ballots that were there that were being counted were legal. And that we didn't get. That option was closed to the auditors in Arizona. But their report identified tens of thousands, 50,000 or 150,000, I don't remember the exact number, of ballots that were of questionable illegality.
And the margin in Arizona was
about 10,000. So much larger than the margin.
the audit Maricopa County.
Does Trump saying use paper ballots not a valid alternative or way to make sure elections are secure? No, because my understanding is that every single thing is using paper ballots already. That's my understanding for the last elections.
Hey,
What?
I'm sorry. You should talk to him right now because he's not going to be back until August 1st. So you should talk to him right now while he has time because he's got a big conference for the next few weeks.
All right, I'll email him.
Okay.
Bye.
I put you in the group. Just talk to him.
Okay.
Auditors identified all kinds of problems. Now, what's the next step? Is there an investigation?
Well, their next step originally planned in the audit, which was shut down by threat of criminal prosecution by the acting assistant attorney general in the U.S. Department of Justice, was to go and do a survey, a canvass of voters. But they were threatened with voter suppression, criminal prosecutions if they conducted that canvass.
Oh, I see. Now, in Pennsylvania, you've talked about there were
Threatened acting assistant attorney general in the U.S. Next step originally planned in the audit, which was shut down by threat of criminal prosecution by so much larger than the margin.
the audit Maricopa County. The auditors identified all kinds of problems. Now, what's the next step? Is there an investigation?
Well, their next step.
This I just don't remember it, but this Maricopa County stuff was gone over so much. It was like all like total bullshit. But it's been was this the one that involved that ninja analysis, or was that like a different, that one, the bullshit company with the retarded tech analysis or whatever?
Originally planned in the audit, which was shut down by threat of criminal prosecution by the acting assistant attorney general in the U.S. Department of Justice, was to go and do a survey, a canvass of voters. But they were threatened with voter suppression, criminal prosecutions if they conducted that canvass.
Oh, I see. Now, in Pennsylvania, you've talked about there were 200,000 more votes counted than there were people that the state recorded as having voted. Maybe you could explain that.
So Representative Ryan, a state representative in Pennsylvania, identified initially, I forget what the number was, 400,000, 1.1 million. I'm a little fuzzy on the exact number right now. And he was accused, well, you just don't understand that not all of the counties have followed up with their total tallies. But now, 2.5 years later, we have all of the counties have put in their final tallies, and there's a still 200,000 differential between the number of votes that were cast and counted and the number of people that the state voter registration rolls show as having cast a vote.
So, in other words, the state recorded a certain number of people entering polls, absentee ballots, mail-in, but yet Pennsylvania counted 200,000 more votes. And so, is there
What is it? Okay, I don't have time. This will be the last time I'm done this video. I don't have time to look up every single Pennsylvania 100,000 difference vote count versus registered PA lawmakers. A group of state lawmakers performing extensive analysis of election data today revealed troubling discrepancies between the numbers of total votes counted and total number of voters who voted in the 2020 general election. Department of State. This is like the State Department of State, right? This isn't like the U.S. Department of State, right? Who voted on November 3rd, 2020. As recorded by the Department of State, shows that 6 million. I don't. Shouldn't look this up. It's a waste of time. Yeah. What is the response to this? The claim emerged in a release from the Republican State Representative Frank Ryan and several others on Monday. Is this by Frank Ryan? Okay, yeah. Claim emerged in a release from the Republican State Representative Frank Ryan. The claim then spread to several right-wing websites and social media influencers. However, this comes around incomplete data, according to Wanda Morin, Communications Director for the Pennsylvania Department of State, who called the lawmakers' release obvious misinformation. It was not immediately clear where the numbers cited in the release originated, and Ryan did not respond to a call seeking comment on Tuesday. However, the apparent reference to SURE, the statewide uniform registry of electors in Pennsylvania, points to state data on the voting history of registered voters, which some large counties have not finished uploading yet. These counties, which include Philadelphia, Allegheny, Butler, and Cumbria, would account for a significant number of voters. So is this it? The numbers certified by Pennsylvania counties in November show the More than 6.9 million voters cast ballots in 2020 election, electing Biden the winner by more than 80,000 votes. Social media users in recent weeks have also made similar claims that there are more votes counted than registered voters in battleground states like key cities. These claims easily debunked. Pennsylvania, for example, there were nearly 7 million votes cast. The total number of registered voters in 2020 was just over 9 million. Okay. Jesus Christ. At the time, there are still a few counties that have not completely uploaded their voting history to the share system. These counties include Philadelphia. Oh, okay. All right. Jesus. Okay. Okay. Fuck all this. All right.